Welcome to the veiled heart of the Ottoman Empire, where power whispered through silk curtains and alliances were forged in the steam of Hamas. Today, we peel back the layers of one of history's most enigmatic figures, the Harem Agha, or Chief Black Eunuch, the Kızlar Ağası. He wasn't just a servant, he was the unseen architect of an empire, the silent enforcer of imperial desires, and the man who held the keys to the Sultan's most guarded secrets. In this detailed analysis, we'll explore his origins in depth, tracing the harrowing path from African captivity to palace prominence, his iron-fisted authority within the harem's gilded cage, where every whisper could alter destinies, and the intricate political web he spun that could elevate or topple sultans themselves. Prepare to step into a world of eunuchs, sultanas, and shadows, a realm where castration was not merely a physical alteration, but the steep price paid for ultimate, unassailable power. This figure, often overlooked in mainstream histories, represents a fascinating inversion of social hierarchies, where slaves became masters and outsiders wielded influence over the mightiest rulers. Let's start at the very beginning, the brutal forge that shaped the Harem Agha into the formidable force he became. Born often in the vast, sun-scorched, sub-Saharan regions of Africa, places like the highlands of Ethiopia, the arid plains of Sudan, or the ancient kingdoms of Nubia, these boys were captured as mere children during the endless, brutal wars and slave raids that plagued the continent from the 16th to the 19th centuries. The Ottoman Empire's insatiable appetite for eunuchs stemmed from a deep-seated need for trustworthy guardians who could navigate the intimate spaces of the imperial household without the perceived threats posed by unaltered men. These eunuchs were seen as ideal servants, devoid of the distraction of sexual desire. They could serve as impartial guardians of purity in a harem teeming with beauty, temptation, and potential intrigue. The process of emasculation itself was a nightmarish ordeal, a horror story etched into the annals of human suffering, performed crudely in makeshift surgical settings, often by itinerant practitioners using primitive tools, like sharpened knives and cauterizing boiling oil or hot sand, to staunch the bleeding. It carried a staggeringly low survival rate of just 10 to 20%. The agony was unimaginable, with many succumbing to infection, blood loss, or shock in the days following. Those who endured, the so-called lucky ones, though one might hesitate to label them as such, emerged forever changed, their bodies scarred and mutilated, but their minds honed by the sheer will to survive in a world that had stripped them of their innocence and autonomy. From there, they were thrust into the chaotic, dehumanizing slave markets of bustling cities like Cairo or Istanbul, where they were auctioned off like commodities. Their value assessed not by their strength or skills, but by their altered state and potential for loyalty. By the 16th century, during the reigns of legendary sultans like Suleiman the Magnificent, whose era marked the zenith of Ottoman splendor, the role of the Kızlar Ağası had evolved dramatically from that of a mere attendant or lowly overseer to the supreme overlord of the imperial harem, appointed directly by the sultan himself. This position granted him unparalleled access and authority, answering only to the emperor and occasionally to the powerful valid sultan, the sultan's mother. Imagine the profound irony, a black African slave, castrated and foreign-born, rising through the ranks to command hundreds of women, including the valid sultans who wielded immense behind-the-scenes influence, the favored concubines who bore future heirs, the odalisques who entertained and served, and the vast array of servants who kept the machinery of the harem running smoothly, all within a space that was simultaneously a paradise of luxury and a prison of rigid protocols. The harem itself defied the lascivious Orientalist fantasies perpetuated by Western literature and art. Far from a den of idle sensuality, it was a sprawling, labyrinthine complex encompassing over 400 rooms in the Topkapi palace alone, functioning as a parallel court where education flourished, political intrigue simmered, and espionage was an art form. Women here were not passive ornaments. Many were highly educated, multilingual, and adept at navigating power dynamics. The Aga's authority was absolute and multifaceted. He controlled who entered and exited the sacred precincts, enforced the strict hierarchies that governed daily life, and even managed the intricate finances of this self-contained female empire within the larger Ottoman domain, handling budgets for clothing, jewels, food, and endowments that could rival those of provincial governors. But what did this authority truly look like on a daily basis? In the rhythm of palace life, the Harem Agha was nothing less than the eyes, ears, and unyielding fists of the sultan, embodying vigilance in every aspect of harem operations. As dawn broke over the Bosphorus, casting golden hues through latticed windows, he would oversee the morning ablutions in the grand hammam, those opulent marble baths adorned with intricate Islamic tiles, where women bathed in waters scented with rose petals, jasmine, and amber, their conversations weaving a rich tapestry of gossip, alliances, and subtle plots that could spark palace coups or shift the balance of power. He assigned duties with meticulous precision. The lowliest slave girls, often newly arrived from distant lands, might be tasked with scrubbing the polished floors or tending to the gardens, bursting with tulips and hyacinths, while the favored concubines, figures like Harem, Sultan, Suleiman's passionate and politically astute Ukrainian consort who rose from slavery to empress, received private tutors in an array of subjects including classical poetry from masters like Fuzili, intricate music on the oud or kanon, and the nuances of statecraft that prepared them to influence their royal offspring. Education fell squarely under his domain. He personally handpicked a cadre of lesser eunuchs, both white ones from the Caucasus and black ones like himself, along with trusted female teachers, to mold these women into cultured, intellectual powerhouses. This was no mere ornamentation. It ensured that harem women could advise sons who might one day ascend the throne, perpetuating dynastic stability through informed counsel. In this way, the Yugo was not just an administrator, but a shaper of futures, investing in the intellectual capital of the empire's hidden half. Discipline, however, represented the darker, more shadowy side of his rule, a necessary counterbalance to the harem's opulence. Whispers of adultery, disloyalty, or even mild insubordination would trigger swift action. The Agha investigated such matters personally, leveraging his extensive network of lesser eunuchs who infiltrated every nook and cranny of the vast complex. Like silent specters, punishments were calibrated to maintain order without disrupting the facade of serenity. Subtle measures might include isolation in dimly lit cells, where the offender contemplated their transgressions amid echoing silence, while more severe infractions could lead to savage flogging with silken cords designed to inflict pain without leaving visible scars that might mar the harem's aesthetic perfection, or, in extreme cases, exile to remote provinces where forgotten women faded into obscurity. Historical records from the 17th century, such as the vivid travelogues of the renowned Ottoman explorer and chronicler Evliya Çelebi, paint detailed portraits of Ugaz like Habasi Mehmed Agha, who wielded his ceremonial staff not merely as a symbol of office, but as a practical tool to silence dissent and enforce compliance. He was, in essence, the harem's high priest of order, a figure who preserved the illusion of harmonious domesticity while deftly navigating the venomous rivalries that pitted valid sultans against one another in their ceaseless quests for influence over their sons, the potential heirs. These matriarchal battles were fierce. A valid like Turhan Sultan might scheme against Kaksım Sultan, with the Agha often acting as arbiter or ally, his decisions rippling through the empire. Yet, the Harem Agha's power extended far beyond the scented walls and perfumed gardens of the harem, reaching into the very corridors of imperial governance. He served as the crucial bridge between the secluded female inner sanctum and the bustling male outer court, the divan, where grand viziers and pashas debated policy. In this role, he carried confidential messages from the valid sultan to the grand vizier, often laced with bribes in the form of gold ducats or precious gems, or veiled threats that could unravel careers. During the 17th century's infamous Sultanate of Women, a period when formidable figures like Kaksım Sultan effectively ruled the empire through their puppet sons, the Agha emerged as her indispensable enforcer, executing her will with ruthless efficiency. Consider the example of Gaznefar Uga, under Sultan Mehmed III. Though a white eunuch of Venetian origin, the principles of his influence mirrored those of his black counterparts. He amassed a staggering personal fortune through strategic endowments known as vakifs, charitable foundations that funded majestic mosques with soaring schools teeming with scholars, and soup kitchens for the poor across the sprawling metropolis of Istanbul, his wealth rivaling that of the empire's most powerful pashas and often surpassing it in liquidity. By the 18th century, Black Aghas, like the legendary El Hajj Beshir Agha, who loyally served 3 consecutive sultans from 1717 to 1744, had ascended to control the empire's religious appointments, influencing the ulema, the body of Islamic scholars who interpreted Sharia law and advised on moral matters. Bashir stacked the religious hierarchy in favor of pro-African policies, promoting allies who shared his background and even meddled in geopolitical affairs, such as the protracted wars against European powers like the Habsburgs and Russians. By swaying decisions on resource allocation and alliances, this formidable political clout was no accident. It was meticulously engineered through a combination of loyalty secured by generous patronage in gold and the installation of fear through demonstrated ruthlessness. The Yuga commanded a private militia composed of fellow black eunuchs, rigorously trained, armed with curved scimitars, and sworn to unbreakable secrecy, who patrolled the harem's ornate gates and labyrinthine passages like ethereal ghosts in the night. These guardians intercepted clandestine letters smuggled in fruit baskets or hidden in hems, spied on ambitious viziers, plotting in shadowed alcoves, and on rare occasions, orchestrated assassinations that eliminated threats with poison-laced sherbets or silent daggers. One infamous tale from the late 16th century revolves around the Uga serving under Sultan Murad III, accused of poisoning rivals to favor the faction of Harem's descendants. He evaded justice by manipulating the very scribes and historians who chronicled events, ensuring his version of truth prevailed in the imperial archives. His authority grew so vast that sultans like Ahmed I consulted him on a wide spectrum of matters, from arranging strategic marriage alliances that bound distant provinces to the throne, to planning military campaigns against Safavid Persia or Venetian fleets. In a rigidly patriarchal empire, the Agha functioned as the matriarch's proxy, transforming the ostensibly private harem into a shadow government that pulled strings across the vast Ottoman domains, from the Balkans to North Africa. But such immense power inevitably bred peril, casting long shadows over the Aga's existence. His position was inherently precarious, balanced on the knife edge of a single sultan's whim or a valid's shifting favor, which could abruptly end his reign with a decree of dismissal or execution. The act of castration itself imposed profound isolation. Deprived of the ability to form a family or sire heirs, he had no personal lineage to protect or legacy to pass on beyond the harem's confines, which became his entire world, a gilded cage of his own. The psychological tolls were immense and well documented in Ottoman chronicles. Many Ughas descended into deep paranoia as their tenures lengthened, surrounding themselves with layers of sycophants who fed their suspicions and isolated them further from reality. Whispers of plots, real or imagined, haunted their nights, leading to purges that thinned their ranks. By the 19th century, as the Ottoman Empire grappled with modernization through the Tanzimat reforms, which introduced Western-style bureaucracy, education, and legal codes, the harem's once impenetrable insularity began to crumble under the influx of European ideas and technologies. The last great Agha Husrev of Agha under the autocratic Sultan Abdul Hamid II witnessed his influence wane dramatically as telegraph lines connected the palace to the world and reformist intellectuals challenged traditional structures. The Young Turk Revolution of 1908 delivered the final blow. The imperial harem was dissolved amid calls for constitutional monarchy, its inhabitants dispersed, and the remaining eunuchs pensioned off into obscurity or left to wander the changing streets of a modernizing Istanbul, their era consigned to history's footnotes. So, what enduring legacy does the Harem Agha leave behind in the grand tapestry of history? He embodies the Ottoman genius for inverting entrenched hierarchies, transforming slaves into de facto kings, allowing Africans to dictate terms to Turks and Europeans alike in the heart of empire. His story powerfully challenges the Eurocentric views that reduced the harem to a mere playground of sensuality and excess. Instead, it reveals a crucible of intellect, strategy, and resilience, where eunuchs like him engineered the cultural and political zenith of the Ottoman Golden Age. Through astute management and alliances, drawing from the African diaspora, he infused the empire with a unique resilience, funding madrasas, Islamic schools that educated generations of scholars, administrators, and artisans, fostering knowledge that outlasted dynasties. Yet, this narrative is profoundly tinged with tragedy. The exorbitant cost of such power was nothing less than humanity itself, a sacrifice of body, spirit, and connection that underscores the brutal mechanics of imperial ambition. The Harem Agha, guardian of secrets, tyrant of the shadows, statesman without a state. In the palace of endless intrigues, he was the ultimate keeper of confidences, a figure whose life illuminates the complex interplay of power, identity, and survival in one of history's greatest empires. If this deep dive into the Ottoman shadows has captivated your imagination, consider exploring further the lives of the valid sultans or the architectural marvels of Topkapi. Keep questioning the veils of history, for behind them lie stories that reshape our understanding of the past.